He sat quietly in the lobby, the soft hum of the air conditioner barely cutting through the silence. Jacob stared blankly at the polished floor, its glossy surface reflecting the dim lights overhead. He had come to the Grand Hotel with a sense of excitement that had quickly faded into an uncomfortable knot in his stomach. The lobby was designed to impress. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting soft light on marble pillars. Guests moved gracefully around him, each absorbed in their own world. Laughter and chatter bounced around, but Jacob felt like he was in a bubble, separate from it all. His eyes wandered to the front desk. A line of people stood there, checking in and checking out, their faces revealing a mix of joy and impatience. He glanced at the clock on the wall. It was already past 6. The meeting he was supposed to attend had started an hour ago, and here he was, stuck in this limbo, waiting for a response. Jacob wasn't just here for the free snacks or the elegant ambience. He had spent weeks preparing for this meeting. Every late night, every moment reviewing his notes had led to this. He had hoped for success to finally touch his life. But now, as he waited, the seconds dragged painfully. The reason for his delay painted itself in bold strokes: a miscommunication about time, a mix-up that felt like a punch to the gut. Suddenly, the lobby door swung open and a chill swept through as the cold October air rushed inside. A woman in a sharp black suit entered, her heels clicking against the floor. She looked around with confident eyes that seemed to quickly size up the world before her. Jacob recognized her immediately. Sarah, the owner of the hotel, was standing right there, and an unexpected wave of shame washed over him. He had heard stories about her, a fierce businesswoman who demanded perfection, yet here she was, finally almost within reach. He felt a mixture of admiration and anxiety as she approached him, a warm smile breaking through her serious demeanor. She said, her voice smooth and inviting yet commanding, "I've heard about the mix-up." Her words struck him deeper than he anticipated. The owner, the woman at the top of this enormous operation, was apologizing to him, a nobody in a sea of faces. His heart raced, caught in a swirl of emotions he couldn't name. "It's fine, really, I understand," he managed to say, trying to sound casual even though his palms were sweating. "No," she insisted gently, "it's not fine. You've worked hard and you deserve respect." In that moment, as she spoke, Jacob felt small, yet he felt something else too: validation. Her sincerity soaked through the awkwardness and filled the space with understanding. This was not just another business interaction, it was a human connection, and he could feel the impact of it. While they spoke, he noticed how others in the lobby began to turn their heads. People paused, their faces interested, perhaps even envious. Jacob's heart raced, not just from the attention, but from a flicker of hope igniting deep inside him. Sarah suggested, tilting her head slightly as she studied his face, "And let us treat you to dinner afterwards." For a moment, Jacob couldn't respond. A whirlwind of thoughts invaded his mind. What would his old self say, the struggling dreamer who often felt invisible? "That would be amazing," he finally replied, the weight lifting off his shoulders. As she walked away to arrange the details, Jacob could hardly believe it. He was just a man in a suit, hoping for the chance to pitch his ideas, and here he was being treated almost like a VIP. He could see the surprised expressions on his peers as they watched him with newfound respect. Amidst all this, a small voice in Jacob's head whispered doubts. What if he wasn't good enough? What if his ideas weren't as strong as he thought? But he pushed those thoughts deep down, determined to focus on the golden opportunity unfolding before him. Time passed quickly. In what felt like seconds, Sarah returned with more than just a new time and place for their meeting. "We're all set for tomorrow afternoon." Jacob swallowed hard. This was real. He would have a chance not just to present his work, but to show who he was. "Thank you," he said, this time with genuine gratitude. "Just do your best, Jacob, that's all I ask," she replied with a reassuring smile before she walked away, leaving Jacob with a heart full of hope and nerves tangled together. Later that night, as he prepared for his presentation, he felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. He ran through his slides, reminded of every late night and early morning that had led him to this moment. But he also pondered the true power behind Sarah's kindness. It wasn't just the opportunity she offered, it was the way she made him feel seen and heard. Often, that's what people really need: a moment of genuine recognition. It can change everything. He had seen doubt consume his friends in the past, how fear could freeze potential in its tracks, but tonight he was determined to break through that. The next day, when he arrived at the conference room, his heart raced again, but this time with a different feeling. Confidence mingled with the anticipation of possibility. He stood before them, an executive team that had the power to change his life. He took a deep breath before he began. As he spoke, he could feel those doubts again, but they were shadows compared to the warmth of belonging that Sarah had ignited in him. The way she had acknowledged his struggle and offered him a place made all the difference. As his presentation flowed, he noticed nods of approval and keen expressions among the team members. They leaned in, engaged, and for the first time, he felt like he truly belonged. He was no longer just a face in the crowd, he was a part of this experience. When he finished and the room erupted in applause, Jacob felt a surge of tears prickling at the back of his eyes. But even more, he felt proud of himself and the journey he had taken to get here. It wasn't just his efforts, it was also Sarah's belief in him that had made this possible. Afterward, as they gathered for dinner, he was still buzzing from the success of his presentation. The atmosphere was relaxed, filled with laughter and genuine conversation. Sarah sat next to him, making him feel like an equal instead of a subordinate. "Your ideas are brilliant, Jacob," she said, genuinely. Time flew as they talked, laughed, and shared stories. Jacob realized that what mattered most wasn't just climbing the corporate ladder, but the connections and friendships forged along the way. He had arrived at a place where kindness could flow, where success wasn't just about numbers, but about lifting each other up. Weeks turned into months, and Jacob became a valuable member of the team. Every day he carried with him the lesson from his encounter with Sarah. She had turned a mix-up into a valuable opportunity, and because of that, he elevated his game, reaching for more than he ever thought possible. Eventually, he grew confident enough to suggest changes and improvements, to push boundaries in ways he hadn't dared before. With every success, he remembered the power of kindness, the importance of recognizing those who might feel hidden or overlooked. He carried Sarah's lessons forward, wanting to create a workspace where nobody felt invisible. Jacob made it a goal to lift others, just as Sarah had lifted him. And every time he returned to that same lobby where it all began, he now saw it differently. It wasn't just a place filled with luxury, it was a stage for possibility. A reminder that sometimes a quiet presence and a genuine apology can change the course of a person's life. So in moments of doubt, Jacob would pause, remembering that day when he had waited in that lobby, when someone recognized him, and how a single act of kindness could bloom into something extraordinary. Life is full of surprises, and it only takes a small gesture to make a big difference. He sat quietly in the lobby, feeling like a ghost among the living. The grand marble floor shimmered under the gentle glow of the chandelier overhead, casting intricate shadows everywhere. The hotel, luxurious and bustling, buzzed with the sounds of laughter and conversation, yet Jacob felt entirely alone in this sea of warmth and smiles. Minutes crawled by, each one heavier than the last. He had arrived hopeful, excitement dancing in his chest, but that thrill was now a distant memory. A mix-up had thrown his day off course, and here he was, waiting for a meeting that seemed to slip further from his grasp with each tick of the clock. He rubbed his sweaty palms against his slacks, the nerves twisting in his gut. Across the lobby, elegantly dressed guests mingled, clinking glasses and sharing stories. He watched as couples strolled hand in hand, their faces aglow with happiness. Just moments ago, he had hoped to be part of that joy, to dive into a world where his ideas could shine. And yet here he sat, marooned in his own disappointment. "Excuse me," a soft voice broke through his reverie. Jacob looked up to see a hotel staff member standing there, clipboard in hand. His stomach churned. "Yes," he replied cautiously, as if fearing the answer. "The owner would like to speak with you, sir," the staff member said. Jacob's heart raced. The owner. The woman who had built this empire. He could barely process the implication. Panic and excitement clashed within him as he rose and followed her across the lobby. Each step felt heavy, each stride more daunting than the last. They passed luxurious suites lined with golden trim, each more extravagant than the last. Finally, they reached a spacious room, beautifully adorned with art and warm lighting. Inside, Sarah Ward, the hotel's owner, sat behind a polished mahogany desk, her eyes sharp yet inviting. "Jacob," she began, her voice confident with a touch of warmth, "I want to sincerely apologize for the mix-up today." His breath caught. The power in her presence was undeniable. It's okay," he managed to stammer, trying to mask his nerves. But the truth was, a part of him felt unseen, lost in the shadows until now. "No, it's not okay," she said firmly, yet gently. Her words sank in, chiseling away the walls he had built around himself. It wasn't just a meeting, it was a lifeline. "Thank you," he said, and this time it came from a place deep within. Seeing her genuine concern, Jacob felt something shift inside him. It was as if a small flicker of light had ignited in his chest, a hope he thought had long been extinguished. He had prepared endlessly for this meeting, a pitch that could change his life, and now Sarah's acknowledgement felt like a push toward that dream. "Let's reschedule your meeting for tomorrow," she suggested, her voice resolute. "In fact, how about a private dinner afterwards?" Jacob's eyes widened. He hadn't expected anything like this. Really, that would be. Her smile was infectious. They discussed the new plans for the following day, and as she laid out details, Jacob felt a sense of belonging creep in. They were not just words exchanged over a desk, they were bridges being built. As he left her office, Jacob felt lighter, the weight of the world slowly lifting from his shoulders. He stepped back into the bustling lobby, but this time it didn't seem daunting. He saw not just faces, but a community, a network of possibilities. It was as if someone had finally turned on the lights in a room he'd been stumbling through blindly. That night, Jacob prepared fervently for his presentation, poring over his slides, refining his thoughts. He paced the small hotel room, rehearsing his lines. Every word mattered, each point was essential, and he reminded himself of Sarah's kind gesture, allowing it to fill him with confidence. The next day arrived in a rush. Jacob's heart beat like a drum as he entered the conference room. The room was larger than he expected, with a long table surrounded by high-backed chairs. Nervous laughter poured out from the executive team gathered there, their eyes filled with curiosity about the man who had captured Sarah's attention. "Let's give this man our full focus," Sarah said, taking her own seat at the head of the table. With a deep breath, he stepped up, shaking off the nerves. He began, his voice steady as he presented his ideas, concepts that had transformed from notes on a page into a passionate vision of collaboration and innovation. The warm light from overhead illuminated his face as he spoke, his excitement peeking through every word. As he delved deeper into his vision, he could see the glimmers of interest in their eyes. Nods and smiles began to ripple through the table, sparking an energy that propelled him forward. He had rehearsed this countless times, but the reality felt electric. Just as he reached the climax of his pitch, Jacob's confidence surged. "Imagine a future," he said, "where our brand not only touches lives through service but connects with the community." The room fell silent, captivated by his passion. Then a voice echoed through the stillness. "You're onto something important," one of the executives said. "Your ideas could redefine our approach." A thrill shot through Jacob. Not only were they listening, but they were inspired. The discussion flowed easily after that, questions ricocheting back and forth, ideas sparking like fireworks in the dark sky. When the meeting finally concluded, applause filled the air. Jacob felt a rush of triumph, an overwhelming sense that he had not just made it through, but had triumphed. He had opened doors, shattered expectations, and risen to heights he hadn't dared to dream. As they moved to dinner, the atmosphere shifted again. Laughter ensued as they mingled, relaxed and free. Jacob sat alongside Sarah and the executives, their conversations turning from business to personal stories, unfolding layers of understanding and connection. At one moment, Sarah leaned in, eyes bright. "You know, Jacob, it takes guts to stand up in front of a group like that. Most people don't realize how hard it is to put your ideas out there." He blushed slightly, grateful for her encouragement. She beamed. "That belief is what fuels progress." As the evening wore on, Jacob felt himself embraced by this newfound community. He had entered as a hesitant stranger, but was leaving as a co-creator, an essential part of the team. Days turned into weeks, and Jacob flourished in his role. He engaged with others, developed strategies, and contributed ideas that sparked change. The impact of one simple act of kindness, Sarah's apology, had transformed his life. Those moments sat with him, guiding him to recognize the importance of lifting others as he had been lifted. He made it a point to check in with new hires, to sit down with teams, and to remind them that their voices mattered. Because he hadn't just come to work, he was creating a place where everyone could thrive. Yet it wasn't always easy. There were tough days, moments where doubt crept back in like a persistent shadow. Each time he faced those trials, he recalled that day in the lobby, feelings of isolation exchanged for warmth and belonging. He often returned to that hotel lobby, now filled with familiarity. Each visit served as a reminder of that pivotal moment when Sarah had recognized him, not just as another face among many, but as someone with potential and possibility. One evening, he overheard two staff members chatting. "I can't believe Sarah took the time to apologize to him," one said, eyes wide. Jacob paused. He felt proud, knowing the ripple effect of that kindness extended beyond him. It was about creating an environment where challenges could be faced together and everyone could rise together. Time continued to pass, and Jacob climbed higher within the company, his efforts recognized and rewarded. Yet he never lost sight of the power of recognition, of that beautiful moment when a stranger had stopped to acknowledge his struggle, to welcome him into a world of possibilities. Years later, Jacob would find himself in a position to mentor others. He created his own initiatives to foster connections among employees, designing programs that encouraged dialogue, creativity, and partnership. And occasionally, in the quiet moments when he reflected on his journey, he would return to that lobby, the place where it all began, recalling the lessons woven into the fabric of that day. In a world that often rushed forward, he learned that taking a moment to connect, to acknowledge, and to truly see the person in front of you could ignite a whole new chapter for someone. Because sometimes it's the smallest acts, a moment of sincerity, a word of kindness, that can create waves of transformation. And in the end, it changes not just one life, but countless others. Jacob knew this firsthand, not just as a story, but as a powerful truth he lived every day. He sat quietly in the lobby, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. The sun dipped low outside, casting golden rays through the massive glass windows and illuminating the polished marble floor. The air was thick with the scent of fresh coffee and polished wood, but Jacob hardly noticed. He stared into the distance, his thoughts swirling in a storm of doubt and anxiety. The grand chandelier hung overhead, crystal reflections dancing across the walls, but it felt as if a shadow enveloped him. He had prepared for months for this moment, rehearsed every word he would say, and yet here he was, waiting and feeling invisible. The lobby buzzed with activity, guests checked in and out, families laughed, and business people chatted animatedly, but his heart pounded with a different rhythm, one of uncertainty. He had arrived early, eager to shine. His pitch to the company's leadership could open doors he had only dreamed of. Yet the cold, hard truth was that he had missed the first half of the meeting because of a scheduling error. After an embarrassing phone call, he had been told to wait in the lobby while they finished without him. Time crawled on, each tick of the clock echoing like a countdown to his failure. "You've worked hard for this," he whispered to himself, trying to summon some courage. But with each passing moment, his confidence evaporated like mist in the morning sun. Suddenly, the grand hotel doors swung open, and a woman in a crisp suit stepped in. She exuded a powerful presence. You could almost feel the energy shift in her wake. Sarah Ward, the owner of the hotel, entered with a purpose. Her heels clicked against the floor as she surveyed the room, her eyes sharp, searching. She was known in the industry for her no-nonsense attitude, a woman who demanded excellence and got it. Jacob's heart raced. He could hardly breathe. Would she notice him sitting there? Would she feel pity? Or worse, would she ignore him altogether? But to his shock, her gaze landed on him, and he felt a jolt of recognition. Without hesitation, Sarah strode toward him, her expression shifting from focus to concern. She said, her voice firm yet warm, like a hand reaching out in the dark. "Yes, that's me," he replied, trying to steady his shaky voice. "I've just been informed that you've been waiting." Those words struck him harder than he expected. Here was the owner of this grand establishment acknowledging him, a nobody in this vast sea of faces. "It's okay," he stuttered, his nerves making it difficult to form coherent thoughts. "No," she insisted, her tone unwavering. Her apology penetrated the walls he had built, and suddenly he felt seen, truly seen. There was a sincerity in her voice that resonated deeply within him. He had spent too many years fighting to be acknowledged, battling feelings of inadequacy while trying to make his mark in an industry that often overlooked the small voices. She continued, "I don't want this to deter you from sharing your ideas. I'd like to reschedule your meeting for tomorrow morning, and how about we have dinner afterward?" Jaw dropped, Jacob felt a mixture of disbelief and hope. Was this real, a chance to showcase his work to the very people he wanted to impress? That would be amazing, he managed to say, fighting back the swell of emotions bubbling inside him. "Great." Then, with a nod, she turned away, leaving Jacob in a haze of disbelief. As the day faded, anticipation replaced the shadow of despair that had engulfed him earlier. He returned to his hotel room, fueled by a fire he hadn't felt in a long time. He ran through his presentation again and again, transforming the fear of failure into a determination to succeed. The sun rose the next day with a brilliant orange glow. Jacob arrived at the hotel with a sense of purpose. The lobby that had once felt intimidating now felt welcoming. Every face he saw seemed like a potential ally. As he walked toward the conference room, he noticed Sarah standing with her team, conversing energetically, and he felt a rush of gratitude. When he entered the conference room, the executive team was already seated, their expressions ranging from curious to eager. Sarah said, her smile setting the tone for the meeting ahead. He took a deep breath and started his presentation. Words flowed from him, each one building on the last, weaving together his passion and vision into a tapestry of possibilities. He spoke not just from his notes, but also from his heart. He opened up about the changes he believed the company needed to embrace, changes that could resonate with customers in more meaningful ways. The room transformed from a boardroom into a place of possibility. As he spoke, he saw their eyes light up with interest. Questions began to spring forth, sparking a lively discussion that felt charged with energy. Jacob found himself answering passionately, confident in the knowledge that he was contributing to something bigger than himself. "I love this idea," one executive said, leaning forward. The room erupted in discussion and laughter, each person building on Jacob's ideas. He felt a rush, a wave of belonging crashing over him. This was his moment, the one he had worked so hard for, and it was happening before his eyes. After an hour that felt like mere minutes, Sarah clasped her hands together. "Thank you, Jacob." Applause filled the room, and Jacob felt a thrill race through his veins. This was more than just approval. It was validation for years of hard work, sacrifices, and late nights spent dreaming of this exact moment. Dinner that evening was a celebration. Jacob sat surrounded by people who were not just colleagues anymore, but partners in a shared vision. Sarah, as enthusiastic as ever, took the lead in steering the conversation, pulling stories from everyone and fostering an environment where everyone felt included. At one point, Sarah turned to Jacob. "You truly brought a fresh perspective today." His heart raced again, but this time with pride. This wasn't just about him, it was about the potential he had to uplift others. If she could see value in him, perhaps he could extend that acknowledgement to others too. "It's all about creating a culture where everyone feels their ideas matter," Jacob said. "I've learned that sometimes just a word of affirmation can make someone's day." The conversation flowed smoothly, stories and laughter intertwining to create bonds that would ripple out into the workplace. Jacob felt embraced by this newfound community. As weeks went by, Jacob thrived in his role. He initiated programs that encouraged staff to pitch their ideas, to speak up and share their voices, just like he had experienced that life-changing night. Yet throughout it all, he carried with him the memory of that day in the lobby, the day Sarah had sent word to apologize, the day he learned that acknowledgement could ignite hope and change. But the journey hadn't been without its challenges. There were days when the workload seemed unbearable, moments when he felt that old doubt creeping back in. He faced setbacks and criticism that stung sharply, making him question everything he had built. But in those dark moments, he would reflect on the power of kindness. He remembered how one woman's acknowledgement had shifted his entire trajectory and used that experience to strengthen himself. He would reach out to his team, reminding them that setbacks were just stepping stones on the path to success. "Remember the lobby," he'd say when team morale sank. The transformation within the team was evident. People began to thrive, their ideas flowed freely during meetings, collaboration blossomed, and enthusiasm filled the air. Jacob felt a pride wash over him as he watched his colleagues grow, inspired to create and innovate. Months turned into years, and Jacob's influence continued to expand. He evolved into a leader known for his empathy and understanding, a person who listened before speaking. He became a mentor, guiding others through similar struggles he once faced, reminding them of the power of kindness and affirmation. And deep inside, he often thought back to that moment in the lobby where it all began, a simple apology that developed into a journey of growth, empowerment, and transformation. In a world that often rushes past, he had learned that taking a moment to connect, to see someone really see them, could create waves that carried through lives and workplaces, lifting everyone up. And as Jacob stood in the same hotel lobby one sunny afternoon, he felt a profound sense of gratitude for that day. It was no longer just a memory, it was an enduring lesson etched in his journey, and he was determined to carry it forward for as long as he could. Because sometimes, the smallest act like an apology could change a life forever, illuminating paths that had once felt shrouded in darkness. Jacob now understood this. It was not just about his success, but also about creating an environment where everyone could rise to meet their potential. And with that, his heart swelled with pride, ready to keep forging new paths for those who would come after him. He sat quietly in the lobby, his heart racing as he watched the world carry on around him. The grand chandelier above sparkled, throwing light onto the intricate marble floor, while voices and laughter filled the air. Jacob had been waiting now for what felt like an eternity, anxiety gnawing at him like a feral animal. Today was supposed to be the launchpad of his dreams, but instead he was marooned in a vast sea of uncertainty. He adjusted his tie, a habit he had developed when nervous. Each tug felt futile, as if he could yank it tighter and somehow draw the attention he so desperately craved. He glanced at the large clock hanging on the wall, its hands ticking like a timer counting down to an inevitable failure. This was the day he was supposed to impress executives, to impress Sarah Ward, the owner of this luxurious hotel. Earlier that morning, he had felt the thrill of possibility. He'd imagined standing in front of the executive team, presenting ideas that had consumed his thoughts for weeks. These weren't just business plans, they were his hopes, born from late nights and relentless dedication. But now that dream seemed just out of reach. Jacob cursed under his breath. He had arrived punctually, only to find a last-minute scramble thrown into chaos. The meeting was already underway, and despite his best efforts to communicate, he was left to stew in the lobby like a forgotten piece of luggage. Across the room, a group of well-dressed people laughed and shared stories, their faces filled with camaraderie. He watched as they pored over bright pamphlets and discussed future ventures while he sat isolated, trapped in his own thoughts. He couldn't help but wonder if they were talking about him, about what a failure he had become. Just then, the heavy hotel doors swung open with a flourish, allowing a rush of cool air to sweep inside. Jacob turned, and walked a woman, authoritative and confident, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Sarah Ward, the woman who had built this establishment from the ground up. He'd heard stories about her, a force of nature in the business realm, revered and feared in equal measure. She moved with purpose, her gaze scanning the room, and when her striking blue eyes landed on Jacob, he felt a jolt of awareness. A moment later, she approached him, her demeanor both commanding and compassionate. She asked, her voice smooth like silk. "Yes, that's me," he replied, the words barely escaping his lips under the weight of his uncertainty. "I've been informed of the unfortunate mix-up regarding your meeting," she said, her tone serious but laced with genuine concern. Those words struck him like a lightning bolt, electrifying and unexpected. Here was the head of the entire operation, taking time out of her busy schedule to acknowledge him, an unknown among many. "It's really okay," he stammered, his voice wavering. "No, it's not okay," she interjected firmly yet gently. "You've worked hard, and you should never feel overlooked." Her sincerity pierced through the haze of anxiety he had wrapped around himself. In that instant, Jacob felt a shift, a flicker of hope igniting deep inside. Here was a woman not just focused on business, but someone who recognized the value of people. She suggested, leaning slightly closer, her eyes sparkling with determination, "And let's have dinner afterward, just you and a few of my top executives." Jacob blinked, unable to fully process what she was saying. Dinner. An opportunity to showcase his ideas. All of this was more than he had dared to hope for. "That would be incredible," he said, his heart swelling. "Wonderful," she replied, her smile radiating warmth. And with that, she turned to organize the details, leaving him momentarily speechless. As Jacob exited the lobby that day, a newfound energy coursed through him. The fiery sense of possibility had replaced the heavy veil of doubt he had draped over himself. The sun was setting, the sky ablaze with colors that mirrored the excitement brewing in his heart. That evening, he sat in his hotel room, going over his presentation for what felt like the 100th time. He flipped through his notes, but this time something was different. Instead of anxiety, he felt a rush of adrenaline, the kind that comes from knowing he had a second chance. The day arrived with brilliant sunlight streaming through his window. Jacob dressed with purpose, smoothing out his crisp shirt, leaving nothing to chance. He wanted to present not just his ideas, but also the confidence that Sarah's kindness had sparked within him. Stepping into the conference room later, he felt a mix of eagerness and trepidation. The walls were adorned with modern art, and the long table gleamed under the soft lights. The executives were seated, their interest piqued, and when Sarah entered behind him, the atmosphere shifted. "This is Jacob," she said, gesturing toward him. Boy, did he ever. Jacob began his presentation, using every ounce of determination to convey his vision with clarity and passion. Each slide flowed seamlessly as he revealed not just data, but a narrative, his narrative. He spoke of innovation, of connecting with customers in ways the company had never before considered. As he poured himself into his pitch, engrossed in the moment, he noticed their faces light up. Questions sprang forth, conversations ignited, and for the first time, Jacob felt he was on equal footing. He was no longer just an applicant or a rival, he was a vital part of something much larger. One executive suggested, leaning forward, eyes gleaming with excitement. "That could work," Jacob responded, spinning ideas faster than he could write them down. Soon there was a dynamic back and forth, the kind of dialogue that breathed life into a room. As the meeting drew to a close, applause erupted, filling the space with a tangible energy. Jacob's heart soared. This was validation, not just of his ideas, but of his worth. Afterward, they proceeded to dinner, where the atmosphere shifted yet again. Among laughter and shared stories, Jacob felt enveloped in this newfound camaraderie. Each executive introduced themselves, sharing anecdotes that transcended the rigid corporate facade he had expected. "What impressed me most about your pitch, Jacob, was your ability to see the bigger picture," Sarah noted, raising her glass. "You remind us all of the importance of innovation and connection." With glasses clinking and conversations flowing freely, Jacob realized he had not just won a meeting, he had become part of a family, a team that thrived on collaboration. They weren't just colleagues, they were people whose passion for their work reflected his own. As the weeks turned into months, Jacob flourished in his role. He approached his job with vigor, inspired by the opportunity Sarah had given him. He initiated brainstorming sessions, encouraged open communication, and embodied the nurturing energy that had been bestowed upon him. Once a man lost in a lobby, he now transformed into a leader. However, the challenges didn't disappear. There were days of failure where plans fell through and doubts crept back into his mind. But he had learned to recognize these moments for what they were: stepping stones, not dead ends. In those darker days, he would recall the warmth of Sarah's apology, a small act that had blossomed into something extraordinary. He made it a rule to extend that same kindness to others, prioritizing acknowledgement over indifference. He would often hold casual check-ins with team members, ensuring everyone felt valued. "You matter here," he'd say, his voice steady, knowing firsthand the power of those words. One day, as Jacob walked through the hotel lobby, he spotted an intern sitting alone in a corner, their face clouded with uncertainty. Remembering his own journey, he approached with a smile. He asked gently, taking a seat beside them. The intern opened up about feeling overwhelmed about the pressure of wanting to impress and feeling insignificant. In that moment, Jacob recognized the same fire of doubt he once struggled with, and he shared his own story of that fateful day he'd sat quietly in the lobby, waiting for the opportunity that had changed his life. "Everyone has their struggles," he said softly. With each passing day, Jacob sought out opportunities to lift others, ensuring no one felt as isolated as he had once felt. His team thrived on this culture of openness and support, fostering creativity and collaboration that propelled not just their projects but also their spirits. Eventually, Jacob's growth led him to greater heights within the company, but he never forgot the source of it all, the simple act of acknowledgement, that human touch that boosts dreams and spirits. Years later, as he walked once more through that vibrant hotel lobby, he couldn't help but smile. The place radiated warmth and possibility, and it served as a constant reminder of how far he'd come. In an industry often tinged with hustle and harshness, Jacob was determined to carry forward the lessons from that pivotal day. Behind every door, he knew there were stories waiting to be shared, voices yearning to be heard. As he looked around, he became keenly aware of the faces that surrounded him, each holding potential that was just waiting to be unleashed. He felt it was his duty to help them find their light, because sometimes it really is the simplest gestures, the offered word of kindness, the acknowledgement of struggle, that create ripples of change, transforming not just one life, but entire communities. Jacob understood this equally as he thrived in his own success. And with that understanding, he stepped forward, ready to continue the cycle of empowerment, just as Sarah had done for him. The future was bright, and together they could illuminate paths yet imagined. He sat quietly in the lobby, the hum of conversation swirling around him like an invisible fog. Jacob felt like an outsider in a world teeming with life. The hotel exuded luxury, gleaming marble floors, ornate chandeliers casting a warm glow, and guests drifting in and out, their laughter echoing off the polished walls. But instead of feeling enchanted, he felt a knot tightening in his stomach. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in his mind, a countdown to an opportunity he feared he might miss. Today was supposed to be his moment, a chance to demonstrate his ideas to the executives of one of the top hospitality companies in the country. He had prepared for weeks, rehearsing his pitch, perfecting every detail. Yet here he was, waiting in this elegant lobby because of a scheduling mix-up that had left him feeling abandoned and unseen. He glanced at the line forming at the front desk. People chatted animatedly, some checking in while others exchanged pleasantries. Jacob felt invisible, tucked away in a corner like a forgotten piece of luggage. A familiar ache settled in his chest, the sting of inadequacy. Would they even notice he was gone? Would anyone care? As he shifted in his seat, he caught sight of a couple laughing as they strolled past, their hands intertwined. It was a sharp contrast to his own isolation. He could almost hear their shared thoughts, a world filled with dreams and plans that didn't include him. And then, just as he thought the day couldn't get worse, the hotel doors swung open. A gust of wind swept through the lobby, breaking the stale silence. In walked Sarah Ward, the hotel owner, her presence commanding attention like the sun breaking through the clouds. Her tailored suit hinted at authority and an eye for detail, and as she moved through the room, people turned their heads, their conversations fading to quiet admiration. Jacob swallowed hard, recognition washing over him. He was well aware of her reputation, a visionary in the hospitality industry who had built her empire through sheer grit and determination. He felt small, insignificant even as she approached. She asked, her voice strong yet melodic. He nodded, trying to muster some semblance of confidence. "I've just heard about the mix-up regarding your meeting," she said, her expression shifting to one of genuine concern. "I want to personally apologize for the oversight." Those words felt like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. Jacob was taken aback, the warmth of her voice cutting through the fog of doubt that clouded his mind. "It's okay," he stammered, though he didn't really believe it was. "No." "It's not okay," she insisted, her eyes piercing yet filled with compassion. "You've put in the effort, and I won't let this stand. We need to reschedule your meeting for tomorrow, and I'd like to invite you to dinner afterward with myself and several executives." Jacob's heart raced, hope sparking like kindling catching fire. "That would be amazing," he managed to reply, the weight of desperation lifting slightly. "Excellent. I'll have my assistant reach out with the details," she said, and with a nod she walked away, leaving Jacob in a whirlwind of emotions. As he sat back down, disbelief washed over him. How could a simple apology transform his entire day? He felt a flicker of excitement warm his chest, breaking through the walls he had built out of fear and self-doubt. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow he would have the chance to show them who he was and what he could offer. He left the hotel that evening with a renewed sense of purpose. With each step he felt lighter, the invisible weight of frustration lifting. He returned to his room, flipping through his notes, eager to refine his presentation. The night passed in a blur, anticipation buzzing in his veins. The next morning dawned bright and clear. Jacob dressed meticulously, making sure every detail was perfect. He entered the lobby again, this time feeling a sense of belonging rather than alienation. He was no longer trapped in doubt, he was stepping into opportunity. When he entered the conference room, he felt the energy shift. The executives were gathered, their faces a mix of curiosity and expectation. Sarah welcomed him with a warm smile, and Jacob returned it, feeling a connection that had seemed so distant just days prior. With determination coursing through him, Jacob began his presentation. His voice steadied as he spoke about his vision for the company, ways to innovate, connect with customers, and carve out new paths in the industry. The confidence he had once lacked surged within him, buoyed by Sarah's belief in him. As he spoke, the room came alive. Questions flowed, conversations ignited, and Jacob transformed from an anxious presenter into a passionate visionary. The executives leaned forward, intrigued, their eyes sparkling with the possibilities he painted with his words. One executive asked, his enthusiasm palpable. Jacob's heart swelled. "As soon as we decide to move forward," he replied, feeling a rush of adrenaline surging through him. The meeting concluded with a round of applause. Jacob felt a wave of euphoria wash over him. This was more than just a pitch, it was validation of his hard work and potential. He had transformed from a man sitting idly in a lobby into someone whose ideas could reshape a company. Later that evening, the dinner felt almost like a celebration. Jacob found himself surrounded by the executives who had once seemed formidable and distant. He was now part of their inner circle, a voice that would be heard, an opinion that mattered. As they shared stories and laughter, Jacob felt an unexpected camaraderie. Sarah frequently engaged him, asking questions and encouraging input, making sure he felt included in every discussion. "You have such a fresh perspective, Jacob. I truly appreciate your insights," she said, raising her glass in a toast. In that moment, Jacob realized how profound an effect one conversation could have. Sarah's simple apology had changed everything. He felt a renewed sense of duty to pay it forward, to ensure others felt valued just as he had. Over the weeks that followed, Jacob excelled in his role. He initiated collaboration sessions, encouraging everyone's ideas, executives and interns alike, to be heard. He remembered the isolation that sat heavy in his stomach that day he waited in the lobby, and he vowed to create an environment where no one felt alone. The team thrived under this new atmosphere. Innovation flourished, and so did the camaraderie. They shared victories, celebrated milestones, and weathered storms together. Jacob proudly became a mentor, guiding others through the ups and downs of corporate life, just as Sarah had once guided him. But with success came challenges. Doubts sometimes clouded Jacob's mind, just as they had in the past. New hurdles emerged, and there were days when everything felt overwhelming. It was during these tough moments that he drew strength from his experience in the lobby, from the warmth of Sarah's acknowledgement. He often found himself sitting down with colleagues who seemed lost, reminding them of the importance of resilience and connection. "You've got something valuable to say," he would assure them, his words echoing the support he once received. One afternoon, Jacob spotted an intern sitting alone at a table, staring at a laptop screen, frustration etched across her face. He recognized that familiar struggle and approached her, a determined smile crossing his lips. "Hey, what's going on? You look like you could use a break," he said, taking a seat beside her. She hesitated before opening up about feeling overwhelmed by her tasks, a swirl of anxiety gripping her. Jacob listened, nodding, recalling the time he had sat in despair, waiting for an opportunity. "Sometimes it just takes one moment of connection to change everything," he said gently. "You matter here." They spent time talking, and slowly but surely her shoulders relaxed and the cloud of self-doubt began to lift. A little later, she looked at him with newfound determination. "Thank you for this." As the months rolled on, Jacob continued to foster a culture of recognition and empowerment. His team blossomed, shaping ideas that reverberated beyond the walls of their office. They pushed boundaries, embraced creativity, and collectively built a foundation of innovation that became a benchmark in the industry. Now, years later, Jacob found himself in the same vibrant hotel lobby where it all began. He felt a rush of nostalgia wash over him. The place that had once felt so intimidating now exuded warmth, filled with echoes of laughter and conversations that thrived on possibility. He watched families check in, friends share stories, and colleagues exchanging ideas. And he smiled, knowing that the ripple effect of one genuine conversation, the apology from a determined owner, had stretched far beyond himself. It had transformed not just his career, but the lives of countless others. He felt empowered to nurture a culture where kindness reigned, where voices could rise, and where no one would ever feel alone again. As he stood there, he understood that every moment matters, that even the smallest act of acknowledgement could create waves of change. And with that understanding, he stepped forward, intent on making a difference and ready to lift others just as he had been lifted. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow through the hotel lobby. Jacob felt the force of potential all around him, and he knew that the journey was far from over. In this bustling space filled with life, he was determined to carve a path where dreams could flourish, fueled by the promise of kindness, connection, and the belief that everyone deserved to be seen. He sat quietly in the lobby, his heart racing as he clutched a worn leather portfolio on his lap. The hotel lobby was a blend of luxury and chaos. Crystal chandeliers swayed gently above, illuminating marble floors polished to a shine. Guests wandered around, their laughter and chatter filling the air, but Jacob felt like a ghost, unseen and unheard. He had arrived early, buoyed by dreams of success and opportunity. This was not just another meeting, it was the chance to pitch his ideas for a project he had spent years developing. In his mind, this was the moment that could change everything. Yet here he was, sitting in a corner, the minutes ticking by and the weight of uncertainty pressing heavily on his chest. An elegant couple strolled past, their arms entwined, exuding joy. Jacob looked away, remembering a time when he had felt free, unburdened by anxiety and self-doubt. Today, however, it felt all-consuming. He glanced at the clock, its hands ticking with a rhythm he found maddening. Suddenly, his phone buzzed, jolting him out of his thoughts. A message from the company's assistant flashed on the screen, meeting postponed due to scheduling conflict. His heart dropped like a stone. All that preparation, all those late nights reviewing his notes, and now, nothing. A mix of embarrassment and frustration bubbled up within him. This was not just a setback, it felt like an outright rejection. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself, but the panic crept in like a thief. What if they forgot about him? What if he was unimportant? The lobby that had once seemed inviting now felt suffocating. Jacob leaned back, willing himself to disappear as laughter echoed around him. Then in the midst of his despair, the heavy doors of the hotel swung open with a commanding creak. The atmosphere shifted. In walked Sarah Ward, the owner of the hotel, her presence instantly captivating. With an air of confidence that radiated off her, she strode across the lobby, her heels creating a rhythmic beat on the floor. People turned to watch her with admiration, whispering her name like it was a melody. Jacob's heart raced again, not from fear this time, but from pure awe. He had read about her, a visionary and a titan in the hospitality industry. She was known for her uncompromising standards and unwavering support of her team. He knew this was a person who didn't just run a hotel, she created experiences. As she approached the front desk, Jacob's breath hitched. Would she notice him? Would she care? But in an unexpected moment, her gaze swept across the room and settled on him. He felt a jolt, like a spark igniting a flame. She called out, her voice strong yet warm, pulling him from his thoughts. Yes, he managed to reply, feeling the heat of all eyes on him. I've heard about the mix-up regarding your meeting today, she continued, her brow furrowing slightly. The sincerity in her tone washed over him like a soothing balm. It was unexpected and profoundly humbling. He had anticipated indifference, perhaps even a brush-off, yet here was the owner of the entire hotel acknowledging him personally. Fine, he said, but the words felt hollow. No, she said, shaking her head firmly, it's not fine. Her words struck a chord deep within him, forcing him to confront the years of self-doubt that had held him captive. Here was a woman who wielded power and influence, yet she seemed genuinely concerned about his feelings. In that moment, he felt visible for the first time that day. I'd like to reschedule your meeting for tomorrow, she proposed, a spark of enthusiasm returning to her eyes. And how about dinner afterward, just you and a few executives? Jacob's mind raced, a chance to reconnect, to present his ideas to those who mattered. Hope surged within him, pushing aside the heavy fog of despair. Yes, that would be amazing, he said, savoring the renewed energy coursing through him. Excellent, she replied with a smile that lit up her face. I'll have my assistant reach out with the details. With that, she turned, her focus shifting back to the bustling world of the lobby, and Jacob felt a wave of gratitude complementing the adrenaline. Walking back to his hotel room, the world looked different. The vibrant colors of the bustling lobby shifted from daunting to exhilarating. He felt like someone had opened a door that had been locked for far too long, allowing the light to pour in. That evening, Jacob again revisited his notes, driven by a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in ages. The familiar weight pressing on his chest transformed into excitement as he envisioned how he could communicate his vision. The next morning dawned bright and clear. Jacob dressed meticulously, smoothing out every wrinkle, checking every detail as if it were a performance he was destined to nail. When he stepped into the hotel lobby again, the air felt charged. Entering the conference room, he found himself engulfed in the attention of sharp, interested faces. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation. Sarah sat at the head of the table, her eyes focused on him, radiating encouragement. Jacob, we're eager to hear your ideas, she said, gesturing for him to begin. With a deep breath, Jacob launched into his presentation. The words flowed with newfound confidence, buoyed by the validation that Sarah had given him just a day before. He spoke not only of numbers and strategies, but also of a vision, an invitation to connect more closely with their customers. As he spoke, he noticed the executives leaning in, their expressions shifting from mere interest to intrigue. Fears crumbled away, replaced by the thrill of sharing his passion. We can innovate together, he implored. One executive raised an eyebrow, a hint of excitement playing at the corners of his lips. He asked, clearly impressed. Jacob hardly contained his grin. As soon as you give the go-ahead, he replied, the room buzzing with a shared sense of possibility. When the meeting concluded, applause erupted, louder and more energetic than he had anticipated. Jacob felt elated. This was not merely a success, it was a validation of his journey, a recognition of his hard work. Later, as they gathered for dinner in a private room adorned with sumptuous decor, the atmosphere transformed once more. Laughter and chatter filled the air, and Jacob felt like he belonged, a far cry from the lonely man who had waited so long in the lobby. During dinner, Sarah engaged him with questions, her interest sincere. What you presented today is truly revolutionary, she said, looking him squarely in the eyes. Thank you, Jacob replied, feeling warmth spread through his chest. As they shared stories, the executives exchanged anecdotes about their own journeys, their own struggles and successes. Jacob would smile to himself, realizing that even these seemingly untouchable figures had faced adversity. Weeks turned into months, and with every passing day, Jacob thrived in his role. The project he had proposed began to take shape, well received by the entire team. He nurtured a culture of collaboration, encouraging everyone, no matter their position, to contribute ideas. Remembering that day when he had sat in despair, waiting in the lobby, Jacob made it his mission to ensure no one else felt the same kind of isolation he had. Every voice matters, he would tell his colleagues. One afternoon, as he walked through the hotel, he spotted a new intern sitting alone at a table, her brow furrowed in concentration yet clearly frustrated. He recognized the look, the same one he had worn all those months ago. He asked, his voice gentle. She looked up, surprised, but nodded. Sure, Jacob smiled, knowing too well the feeling. You're not alone in this. Remember that everyone has been in your shoes at some point. With every word, he saw her tension ease. They talked through her challenges, and slowly Jacob could see her shoulders relax, her interest in the work rekindling. As the months rolled on, he continued to foster this culture of support and acknowledgement, encouraging open dialogue. His team thrived. Ideas flowed like water, and the enthusiasm that had once eluded Jacob now permeated the workplace. Years later, Jacob found himself back in that vibrant lobby where it had all begun. He was no longer just a specter, a figure waiting for recognition. He was a leader. He felt pride as he observed the laughter and joy radiating through the space. Visiting families, friends, and colleagues shared stories and ideas. Felt profound gratitude for everything that had happened. The mix-up that had once felt like a disaster had turned into a blessing. As he walked through, he greeted staff and guests alike, acknowledging the energy and life surrounding him. Every interaction reminded him why he had fought through the challenges, why he had cherished that moment with Sarah in the lobby. Spotting a group of new employees nervously chatting, Jacob made his way over to them. "Welcome to the team," he said, his voice infused with warmth. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden hue across the lobby, Jacob felt a surge of hope. He reflected on Sarah's apology that had kindled something sacred within him, the belief that everyone could rise. Because sometimes it only takes one small action, a word of kindness, an acknowledgement to create a ripple effect that lifts everyone involved. And as Jacob carried this belief forward, he knew the story of that day in the lobby would forever inspire him, a reminder of the power of connection and hope in a world that often moves too fast. In that moment, he resolved to continue building a culture of support and care, ensuring that every individual felt seen and valued. For he understood that it's not just about personal success, it's about creating a legacy where everyone has the chance to shine. He sat quietly in the lobby, heart pounding with disappointment. The hotel was opulent, a grand space filled with glittering chandeliers and marble floors, yet Jacob felt heavier than the weight of all that luxury. He stared at the clock on the wall, each tick resonating in his mind like a countdown to failure. His fingers fidgeted with the edges of his portfolio, the carefully organized documents inside now feeling like a cruel reminder of the opportunity slipping through his fingers. Today was supposed to be the day, the moment he had worked tirelessly for a chance to present his proposals to the executives of a prestigious hotel chain. But a scheduling error had left him stranded in this lobby while the meeting proceeded without him. He felt invisible, like a statue in a bustling square, surrounded by laughter, excitement, and conversations that did not include him. He strained to catch snippets of the meetings in progress behind closed doors. A blend of voices ebbed and flowed, punctuated by laughter that seemed to mock him. He leaned back in his chair, the plush upholstery feeling suffocating. His mind raced, a host of what-ifs swirling in chaotic formation. Would he be forgotten? Would this moment wipe away months of preparation? Just as he sank deeper into his thoughts, the heavy glass doors swung open, breaking the ambience of the bustling lobby. A gust of cool air swept inside, and in walked Sarah Ward, the owner of the hotel. She was a striking figure, exuding confidence and poise, her tailored suit a testament to her sharp sense of style. Heads turned, whispers filled the air. She was a force to be reckoned with in the hospitality industry. Jacob felt his heart race faster. Would she see him? Would she even care? The door behind her shut with a soft thud, and his breath caught in his throat as she walked closer, her gaze scanning the room with purpose. The energy shifted, even the laughter quieted in her presence. She called out, her voice clear as a bell. He straightened, feeling the weight of all eyes on him. "Yes, that's me," he replied, a mix of nerves and surprise coursing through his veins. "I've just been informed about the mix-up regarding your meeting," Sarah said, her expression shifting to one of genuine concern. Jacob blinked, taken aback by her sincerity. It's okay," he stammered, though inside he was anything but okay. It was a simple phrase, yet it carried the gravity of her acknowledgement, allowing a flicker of hope to ignite. "No, it's not okay," she insisted. "You deserve better than this. You've worked hard, and I won't let this stand. Let's reschedule your meeting for tomorrow, and I'd like to invite you to dinner afterward, just you and a few of my top executives." Stunned, Jacob felt his heart swell with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. A dinner invitation from the owner. He had never imagined he would even share a table with someone of her caliber. That would be amazing, he finally managed to say, overwhelmed by the warmth of her words. "Excellent, I'll have my assistant set it up," she replied, her smile radiant, easing the tension that had gripped him. With that, she turned and rejoined the ebb and flow of hotel life, leaving Jacob in a haze of emotions. As he sat back down, he could hardly believe what had just happened. The feeling of being unseen began to fade, replaced by the fire of renewed purpose. He walked out of the hotel that day, determination replacing despair. The world felt vibrant once more, as if a door had swung open that had been locked for too long. That night he went back to his hotel room, and the words flowed like a river. He refined his presentation, poring over every detail, infusing it with passion. Tomorrow would not just be a second chance, it would be his moment to shine. When the sun rose, Jacob dressed meticulously, smoothing every crease in his shirt, checking his reflection in the mirror one last time. He stepped into the hotel lobby, the morning light spilling through the large windows. This time the ambience felt electric with possibility. Walking into the conference room later, he found himself surrounded by executive faces, each one harder to read than the last. As they settled in, Sarah greeted him and motioned him to begin. Her presence radiated support, and Jacob felt a surge of confidence. With a deep breath, he launched into his presentation, drawing on his passion and ideas like a painter wielding a brush. He spoke not just of business numbers, but of creating experiences that resonated with customers. The executives leaned forward, eyes sparkling with intrigue. His words began to weave a tapestry of connection, collaboration, and growth. Jacob felt a rush. "With your approval, we could start within a few weeks," he said, excitement bubbling within him. The room buzzed with discussions, questions flying like sparks in a summer storm. Jacob reveled in the energy, the shared vision that unfolded before him. When he finished, applause erupted, echoing off the conference room walls. Breathless and elated, Jacob basked in the moment. He had not just survived the meeting, he had thrived, transforming from an anxious bystander in the lobby into a confident voice driving change. That evening, dinner felt less like a formality and more like a celebration. Jacob sat with Sarah and the executives, who eagerly shared their own stories, their struggles, triumphs, and lessons learned. Even the most poised figures revealed vulnerability beneath their polished exteriors, and as they leaned in, Jacob felt a sense of camaraderie he had long yearned for. "Jacob, what you presented today was truly insightful," Sarah said, her eyes gleaming with respect. "You remind us that the heart of hospitality lies in connection." His heart swelled with pride. "It's about creating memorable experiences," he said, continuing the dialogue with passion. As the night wore on, laughter echoed around the table, filled with hope and enthusiasm. Jacob felt energized, no longer just chasing a dream, but actively building a vision he could share with a team that truly valued his insights. Days turned into weeks, and Jacob flourished in his role. He collaborated effortlessly with colleagues, fostering an environment where every contribution mattered. He remembered all too well the feeling of sitting alone in that lobby, waiting for someone to notice him, and it fueled his determination to ensure that nobody else felt that way. "Let's lift each other up," Jacob would say during brainstorming sessions. His team responded, ideas blossoming like flowers in spring. Creativity sparked at every corner, and soon they were rolling out initiatives that captured the essence of their shared vision. However, success brought challenges. As Jacob navigated the demands of his position, there were days when self-doubt crept back in. Old fears whispered, gnawing at his confidence. But through that darkness, he found clarity, a steadfast reminder to lean into his community. When the pressures mounted, he would take time to check in with his colleagues, offering support and encouragement. "You're not alone in this," he would repeat, creating a culture steeped in compassion and understanding. One day he noticed a new intern seated off to the side, furiously typing away, her brow furrowed in concentration. She looked overwhelmed, and Jacob recognized that expression. "Hey there," he said gently, taking a seat next to her. She hesitated, but eventually opened up about the weight of her workload. Jacob listened intently, recalling his own struggles. "You're not required to carry this all alone," he reassured her. "Just remember, every great idea starts with a conversation." As they talked, he could see the tension in her shoulders slowly melting away. By the time he stood up, she looked revitalized, her eyes reflecting a renewed sense of possibility. Months passed, and Jacob's initiatives continued to transform the workplace. The freedom to communicate, to express, fueled the entire team, propelling them to greater heights. Then one evening, as he strolled through the now familiar hotel lobby, he noticed a group of new employees chatting nervously. He could sense their raw anxiety, you could almost see it hanging in the air. Walking over, he greeted them with a smile. "Welcome to the team, everyone. I want you to know you're part of something special, and it's okay to feel a little overwhelmed." Their faces brightened, and the conversation shifted from timid murmurs to open discussions. Jacob felt an overwhelming pride surge within him. This was what he had always dreamed of, a community bound by support and shared ambition. Time went on, and as Jacob took on more responsibilities, his admiration for Sarah only grew. She had personally transformed his life, shown him the value of compassion in a world often governed by cold numbers. Her own journey resonated with him and inspired him to strive for greatness, not just for himself, but for others. Years slipped by, and now, standing in the same hotel lobby that had once felt lonely and foreboding, he watched as life unfolded around him. The laughter, the stories, all began to feel like a vibrant tapestry woven with threads of connection. He spotted families checking in, friends sharing inside jokes, colleagues celebrating wins. The joy radiating from them ignited something deep within him. That day when he had sat quietly in the lobby transformed not just his life, but the lives of everyone he had connected with since. With that clarity, he felt an unwavering commitment to continue fostering a culture of warmth and recognition. Because he understood that sometimes it just takes one small gesture, a simple apology, a moment of connection, to create waves of change that can uplift an entire community. As he glanced around, seeing his team in action, he found the power to influence people in ways he could never have anticipated. He was no longer that anxious man sitting in the corner. All he needed was someone to notice him. And now, with every interaction, he made sure others experienced the same acknowledgement, the same feeling of belonging. Jacob had become more than a leader. He had grown into a beacon of hope for those who felt lost, ensuring they understood their value. In that moment of reflection, Jacob realized one truth. Success is not just measured by personal achievements, but by the lives you touch, the connections you foster, and the community you create. And with that understanding, he stepped forward into the bright future, ready to keep lifting others and forging paths where every dream could flourish. He sat quietly in the lobby, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. This wasn't just any hotel lobby. It was a grand space filled with polished marble floors, extravagant chandeliers casting light that sparkled like tiny stars above, and the chatter of elegant guests mingling and laughing. Jacob, however, was not a part of that laughter. He felt like a forgotten statue, tucked away in a corner, waiting for a moment that might never come. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second echoing the frustration bubbling within him. He had come to this hotel with high hopes, ready to present his ideas to an important group of executives. Weeks of hard work had led to this day, and now it felt like a cruel joke. A simple scheduling error had left him stranded, sitting in this lavish lobby while the meeting took place without him. He glanced at his portfolio, neatly tucked under his arm, each carefully printed page filled with his dreams. Just moments before, he had felt the flutter of excitement. Now it was overshadowed by a growing anxiety. Would they remember him? Would anyone care? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the hotel doors swinging open. A gust of cool air swept in, pulling his attention from the weight of his disappointment. In walked Sarah Ward, the owner of the hotel, a striking figure radiating authority and confidence. Heads turned to watch her, and a hush fell over the lobby. Her reputation preceded her. Jacob's heart raced. Would she see him? Did she even know he existed? Sarah had built an empire in the hospitality industry, renowned as a relentless leader with a keen eye for talent and a firm hand in business. She moved through the lobby with purpose, a force of nature that drew people to her effortlessly. As she approached the front desk, Jacob held his breath. Would she take notice? Was this the moment someone would validate him, remind him that his work mattered? The buzz of the lobby faded into a distant hum as he felt himself becoming an anxious knot. Then, to Jacob's stunned disbelief, she turned and walked directly toward him. He blinked in shock. She asked, her voice smooth yet commanding, cutting through the noise around them. "Yes," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've just heard about the mix-up regarding your meeting," she said, her brow furrowing with genuine concern. At those words, an unexpected warmth spread through Jacob. He hadn't anticipated this. A powerful woman like Sarah taking a moment for him, a nobody in the grand scheme of things. "It's okay," he said, the words spilling out before he could think. "No," she insisted. "It's not okay. You've worked hard to get here, and I want to make this right. How about we reschedule your meeting for tomorrow, and I'd like to invite you to dinner afterward, just you and a few of my executives." Time seemed to freeze. Jacob's heart soared and plummeted at once. A chance to meet the very people he wanted to impress. A personal invitation from Sarah Ward. That would be amazing, he finally managed to say, his voice steadying as hope began to fill the cracks left by disappointment. "Excellent," she replied, her smile brightening the previously heavy moment. With that, she turned back to the lobby, moving among guests and staff as if she belonged to all of them. Jacob felt buoyed. The heaviness in his chest lifted for the first time that day. He left the hotel with determination sparking within him. The world outside felt alive again. This was a second chance, an opportunity to showcase his ideas and possibly step into a new reality. The night buzzed with excitement as he prepared for the following day. Jacob pored over his notes, refining every word in his pitch. He thought of everything he had endured, the late nights, the countless revisions, all leading up to this moment. The doubt that had lingered like a shadow began to fade, replaced by a clarity he hadn't felt in a long time. The sun rose with a brilliant glow, and Jacob arrived at the hotel anxious yet exhilarated. The lobby, once an intimidating space, now felt welcoming. He entered the conference room, greeted by a sea of focused faces. The executives sat there, their expressions a mix of curiosity and expectation. Sarah's voice cut through the tension as she entered behind him. Taking a deep breath, he stood before them, the intricacies of his presentation flashing through his mind like a film reel. He started to speak, and words poured out with a fervor he'd not anticipated. He shared his ideas not just as business theories, but as a vision for creating an unforgettable customer experience. With each word, he painted a picture of innovation, passion, and connection. The eyes around the table glimmered with interest as they lined in closer. He saw nods of agreement, a spark of excitement igniting as he revealed what he had imagined for the future. "Imagine this," Jacob said, "a seamless experience for guests that intertwines modern technology with the charm of personalized service." The room crackled with energy. Questions flew, discussions unfurled, and Jacob felt alive. This wasn't just a presentation, it was a conversation, an exchange of ideas that sparked creativity at every turn. After what felt like a fluid dance of dialogue, Jacob concluded his pitch, and applause broke out, filling the room with warmth. He felt a rush, a culmination of all his hard work and preparation culminating in this moment. The executives were engaged, and the possibilities felt endless. Following the meeting, they gathered for dinner, an atmosphere of celebration tinged with excitement. Jacob felt the weight of his self-doubt lifting with each shared laugh and story. He sat alongside Sarah and several executives, their easy camaraderie putting him at ease. "I must say, Jacob," one executive spoke, leaning in. "Your ideas today have the potential to set us apart in a competitive market." "Thank you," Jacob said, grateful. As the conversation flowed, Jacob found himself sharing more about his journey, the struggles, the triumphs, and the moments that shaped him. They listened intently, sharing their own stories, revealing scars that came with their successes. For the first time in a long time, Jacob felt connected. He watched as their faces lit up, laughter filling the room with a warmth that went beyond mere business. Each anecdote shared from the executives felt like a thread weaving them closer together. Weeks transitioned into months. Jacob dove into his role, thriving in the environment Sarah had fostered. He initiated brainstorming sessions and encouraged collaboration at all levels, creating a culture where every voice mattered. One day, he noticed a new intern sitting quietly in the corner of the office, her face a mask of anxiety. He recognized that look, one he had worn himself not long ago. Jacob approached her, a smile creeping onto his face. The intern looked up, surprise flickering in her eyes. "I just feel overwhelmed. I'm afraid I don't have what it takes to succeed here," she admitted, her voice shaky. "No one has all the answers right away," Jacob reassured her. "Everyone starts somewhere. Your ideas are just as important as anyone else's." As they spoke, he watched her tension dissolve. They brainstormed ideas, bouncing suggestions off each other, her confidence gradually returning. Jacob felt a surge of pride, knowing he was doing what Sarah had done for him, acknowledging her struggle and investing in someone who needed guidance. But one afternoon, an unexpected storm rolled in. Jacob sat in the conference room when the door swung open, revealing Sarah. Her expression was tense. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low. The room grew silent, tension hanging palpably in the air as she stepped inside. Jacob asked, his heart racing. Sarah took a deep breath, grounding herself. "We've received some troubling feedback from our clients. The last implementation hasn't gone as smoothly as we had hoped, and there are concerns." Jacob felt the ground shift beneath him. Anxiety clawed at him, the fear of failure creeping back in. He asked, desperation creeping into his voice. Sarah's gaze sharpened, determination flickering beneath her anxiety. "I want you to lead the charge on this, Jacob. You have a unique perspective, and we need you." But those words only intensified the storm inside him. What if he failed? What if he couldn't turn this around? He had always longed for recognition, but now it felt like a burden. "I'll do my best," he managed, though doubt lingered in the corners of his mind. As time passed, Jacob found himself grappling with the weight of expectation. He put together a team to address the issues, poring over feedback, assessing each critique like a puzzle he needed to solve. But with every setback, the pressure mounted. He spent countless nights at the office, a relentless storm swirling inside him. Meetings with his team turned into heated debates, frustration mingling with uncertainty. Was his vision strong enough to withstand the storm? Then one afternoon, everything seemed to reach a boiling point. Jacob sat reviewing the latest data when a sudden, loud knock on the door sent a shockwave through the room. As he opened it, his eyes widened. Sarah stood there, her face pale, eyes tinged with worry. "Jacob," she said, her tone urgent, "the board just called. They're not happy with the progress." Each word felt like a blow, and Jacob's pulse quickened. This wasn't just a matter of pride. This was a make-or-break moment for the entire team and the vision they had built. He asked, voice barely above a whisper, the weight of the world settling squarely on his shoulders. Sarah took a step closer, her eyes piercing into his. "We're going to fight. We'll pull together resources, dive deeper into the feedback, whatever it takes to turn this around. But Jacob, I need to know if you're up for it." Jacob felt the walls closing in, doubt clawing at him as his mind raced through the ramifications of failure. As he looked into Sarah's fierce, unwavering gaze, something inside him shifted. He took a deep breath and squared his shoulders. "Yes," he replied, the conviction growing stronger. "We will turn this around." And just like that, a newfound determination ignited within him. The storm was brewing, but this time it wouldn't wash him away. Instead, it would strengthen his resolve. However, as Jacob gathered his team to strategize the improvements for the upcoming meeting, an unsettling thought lingered. What if they were still too late? What if all their efforts weren't enough to convince the board? As the hours ticked by, Jacob felt the pressure intensifying. Decisions weighed heavily on his mind, each one a potential make-or-break moment. Would he sink or swim? Would he rise to the occasion, or would the storm sweep him away completely? With the clock ticking down toward the pivotal meeting, Jacob braced himself. The wind howled outside, matching the tempest inside him, and the real battle was only just beginning. Little did he know that the choices he made in those final moments would shape the very future of not just his career, but the legacy of the team he had fought so hard to build.